Hi everyone, this is National Master Dennis Monokroussos, and now we're going to take a look at the last part of my epic battle with Emory Tate from the Indiana State Chess Championships, played at the end of September of this year. And as you've hopefully seen from the last 2 weeks, we've had a tremendous tactical struggle and also a tremendous strategic struggle that after many wild and really topsy-turvy events in the game has come down to this ending here, which at first I thought would favor me or at least be a safe draw, but when I got to it up close and personal, I felt a lot less comfortable here. So let's see how this works out. If I could have drawn this, if I could have won this, who knows? But, well, the win, I think I can safely say that that wasn't happening. But should black draw this? We'll see. Okay, so here I played the move h5. And the idea of this is that, first of all, I'm preventing him from playing maybe g4 and g5. I don't know if he'd want to play that, but I'm preventing it. I'm taking that option away. And really what I was thinking about with this move was that I could bring that while he's spending time with his rook and maybe with his king trying to round up all of my queenside pawns, I can swap off the pawns on the king side. So that was the hope, but it's not so clear. All right, now other ways to play actually I think are pretty decent. So one way to play is just very straightforwardly c3, and this was my original intention here. So the hope is that I can play something like this. So c3, c2, knight to b4, and if I get that, it's over. I mean, as far as a draw goes, and maybe more. All right. So if I can get that, and then I'll have to play either a5, well, probably a5, maybe c5, to secure my knight. And so if I've got that kind of construction, there's no way he can win. I mean, his king will have to go to d2, the rook will have to go to a1, and while he's doing all of that, I can, for sure, get rid of the kingside pawns with just advancing my king. So let's take a look. So he should probably play rook to a1 here, and now c2, so just very aggressive. Okay, so let's say king e2. Okay, important thing to note, if king to e4, which looks pretty good, the problem is that simply knight to b4 is winning. The knight's going to come to a2, and white has no defense against this. Well, he does have a defense. He can play rook to c1. But if he does this, well, then I play a5, or actually I don't have to play a5, I just play king f6 or h5. And there's nothing for white to do. He can't move his rook because it'll allow knight to a2, and he can't even approach my knight. Well, yeah, he can. He can play king d4, king c4. So let's see. So king d4, king f6, king c4, a5, king b5, king f5, king takes, and see if I have any good tricks here. Yeah, no tricks, but looks like I should just be able to play. Let's try c5, king b5. Yeah, this is fine. King g4. And he can't play king takes c5 because of knight to d3. And if he can't play that, then he's just dead. So he's actually just losing in this position. Probably something was kind of stupid about this before. Yeah, and instead of a5, just the immediate c5. So a5 was kind of dopey there. But anyway, we got to the right conclusion about this. So simply c5. So white has no winning chances here if he plays king to e4. So he has to play king to e2. All right, now king f6. Can't play g4 to keep my king out because then he would just lose the pawn, the f4 pawn, and I would have no trouble rounding up the g pawn. Kind of implicit in this, but I should say it because there's all kinds of different ranges of experience and ability watching this. Rook versus knight is a draw as long as the king isn't stuck on the back rank in a really bad place. The king can even be stuck in the back rank sometimes and draw without too much trouble. But that's a place obviously where he can get in trouble. The other place where black can get in trouble, where the knight side can get in trouble, is if the knight gets cut off from the rook, from the king. So those are the two things to be avoided. In this situation, there's no danger of either of those problems arising. Okay, so g4 is no good, and if king to d2, king f5, rook a5, c6, and I'm drawing this with my eyes closed. So absolutely no problem. So it's a pity that I didn't really take c3 seriously enough. So I just thought, okay, his king comes over, he puts the rook on the a file, all these guys are going to fall. But I think if I had rigorously calculated it out, then I would have been just fine. And here I think this is one of these practical things that after all the excitement in the game, I mean, the game I'd gone through so many ups and downs where, first I thought maybe I was going to get the quick draw with bishop takes f3 followed by queen takes h3. I mean, I saw you could play bishop to g2, but I was kind of hoping. And, then, I was on this defensive, but I always felt pretty comfortable about it. And then finally I realized that I was better. And then I made that horrible blunder. And then I had the euphoria again. I mean, it's kind of like a manic depressive ride here where, I go from better to much better to dead lost to, I think I can, to feeling really comfortable about this. And then all of a sudden, again, kind of flip-flopping once again in this ending. So, it's so easy to just get emotionally carried away in a position like this. But really what I should have done is, maybe even just gone for a walk. I mean, I had the time control. I had a chance to just stop, figure out what in the world was going on here. And even though, I spent a fair amount of time trying to work out what to do. Actually, no, I'm looking at I'm looking at my score sheet, and really I didn't take as much time on this as I should have. So I spent probably about 15 minutes on. No, actually I didn't. So I spent like 3 minutes on h5, and then the next move I spent about seven minutes, and then 4 minutes, and then 3 minutes. But it's kind of a too late thing. I mean, both for psychological reasons and for just the hard analysis, I really should have stopped here and even thought for maybe 15, 20 minutes in this position, or at least until I had really calculated it out to death, because I'm in danger in this position. I mean, it's really a dangerous situation, and the margin of error is pretty small. I mean, I'm not going to swindle him with my knight. I'm not going to get some kind of wild attack out of the blue like I got in the game, a few moves ago when it looked like I was going to get mated on the h-file. So in a situation like this, both because things have changed so dramatically in terms of what's going on. I mean, there's no longer any mating questions. It's just a technical ending. And also for the psychological point. And also, when you get through a time control, it's often good to take a few minutes to just kind of clear your head, clear your mind, get a drink of water or whatever, go to the bathroom, whatever you need to do, and just look at the board with fresh eyes. So I really, I think, failed to do that, and it cost. Okay, so from here I played h5. So it had a reasonable idea behind it, but it just wasn't the best thing. I mean, I needed to spend my time doing something more constructive. Okay, now here actually I think he made a small inaccuracy, but it's a surprising one. The best move here seems to be rook to d1, so a very counterintuitive move. So the point is that after c6, he plays rook to d4, and now if c3, he plays rook to c4, and it's very useful for me to get this pawn, especially because it leaves my king in a little bit of a bind. So this would be quite nice. And if knight to b6, trying to hold on to everything, this isn't good. I mean, really, I need to have that pawn advanced and protected as far up as I can. So that's why c3 was such a good move after king to f3. So c3, the further advanced this pawn is, the more I tie him down. So as long as the pawn is safe, or at least safe for a while, that buys me some time. So by playing these kind of half moves like h5, okay, and then after rook d1, c6, rook d4, knight to b6, this isn't doing me any favors really. So from here, rook to d6, c5, rook c6. Okay, again, what do? I don't want to allow him to take that, so knight a4, rook a6, takes this guy with check, and now the king comes over. If c3, the pawn just disappears, simply plays rook to a3. Rook to a6 check. So you always look for little finesses like this. Drive the king back, and only after it's retreated, then you play a move like rook to a3. And white should be winning here. Okay, or if knight to d3, Rook a6, again drives me back. Rook a4, rook a3, and finally the pawn's gone. The c5 pawn isn't going to be much of a help, and white should win this without too much trouble. So again, this is a complicated line, but it's a neat little series of finesses. I mean, especially this rook d1 idea. So you're trying to induce black's pawns to weaker squares, and that would have made his life easier. So he played rook to a1, and here again, if I had played c3, so again, active chess here. c3, king to e4, c6. And I rejected this because I thought, well, he can either play king to e5 or rook takes a7 check, and surely that's good for him. Well, it's not so clear. So if, for example, king to e5, this is actually just a bad move, because I have c2 now. And the threat is again to play knight to b4, followed by either knight to a2 or knight to d3. So the worst move is rook takes a7, king h6, and after rook to a1, knight b4, he has no defense, because if he plays rook to c1 to stop knight a2, I win with a fork. And if he plays king to d4, there's knight a2. So rook takes a7 check, just loses outright. But even rook to c1 isn't so great. So I play knight to b4, threatening the fork, and now he's got to start retreating. So king d4, I play king f6, he plays king c4, and as we saw a couple of minutes ago, c5, everything's covered. So, boy, I sure wish I had, thought of this. I mean, I could have calculated this. I mean, it would have been work, but if I had been patient enough, I could have worked this out and could have held the draw. Okay, so finally, that was on king to e5. If rook takes a7 check, king f6, rook a4. So here, at least, I don't have a clear-cut draw, but I think after just king e6 and then king to d6, I don't think he can win. So I couldn't quite swear to it or anything like that. But the problem for him is that it's not clear how he makes progress. So if he moves his rook away, if he plays rook a4, rook to d4, I just play king to e6, and this is good. If he plays, let's say, king to d4, okay, well here I have to think about this. Maybe I can play h4, but I don't want to be too hasty about that. Let me think. Okay, so if h4, g takes h4, knight f4. Okay, he can't play rook takes c3 because of knight e2 check, and I even win. So let's say king takes. Okay, now does king to e5 work? Alright, so rook c6, king f5. Yeah, this draws. Unless there's some kind of miracle, this should draw. Yeah, of course, because I just played g5 here. Rook f4, g takes f4, and yeah. So I'm drawing in this position. So again, I don't feel comfortable saying it's a 100% draw, but I'm pretty sure it's a draw. And the other point that's important is that f5 doesn't work because takes, and knight e3 check. With a little forfeiture. So another drawing opportunity gone awry. In both cases, really the key move was to play c3. So it looks like it's committal, or it's overcommittal, but really it's not. And it buys me some time. So he's got to be a little bit passive, and while he's trying to round it up, I can make progress on the king side. Okay, but I again had this idea. I was going to play king f6, and I thought, well, all right, he's still got to bring his pieces over to win my c pawn, and then I'm in business. I'm going to play king f5, g5, and h4, and swap them all off. But it doesn't work. Okay, so he played rook takes a7. And now, again, probably c3 is the right move. But rather than look at that for a third time, I had another idea here. And this is kind of interesting. During the game, I thought, I considered, but only to really almost immediately reject the idea of trying to create a blockade. So I thought, okay, if I lose these two pawns, and it's just, my g and h pawns against his g and f pawns and rook and knight, there must be a way for him to win that. So I just assumed, okay, he's got rook and 2 versus knight and 2. It has to be a win. But it turns out it's really not so easy. So let's take a look at a position where we get to that. And okay, so the following moves are not meant to be accurate at all. They're just meant to get us to the crucial ending. Okay, so now, yeah, so let's say king f6. So the question is, well, how does white break through here? And so again, I invite you to stop the lesson if you haven't tried to work this out already since last week, and see if you can figure out how in the world does white break through here. I mean, it looks very simple, or at least, well, not so much that it looks very simple, but it seems just a matter of common sense that rook and 2 versus knight and 2, all the pawns on the same side, it should be easy. But it's not. So I invite you. I think it would be a great exercise. You would learn a tremendous amount trying to prove the win here. If there is a win. Okay. So I'll assume that this is you guys an hour or two later, maybe a day or two later. I mean, really, it's worth spending the time on this. I think few endgame exercises, or few exercises are better than trying to figure out positions like this. Okay, so here's what would happen, or a possible way in which things could go. All right, so let's say king f6, rook c5, knight h6. Okay, there are various things that can be tried. Now let's just see what we can come up with here. So king to e4 looks logical. And now, so one key thing to note is that if I were to play knight f5 here, I mean, this is really essential. So if white didn't have this, then I don't think there would be a win. So the key thing is that white has rook takes f5, and then king d5, and the king just winds its way in, and he's going to win my f pawn. So because of this, the knight f5 resource can only be used when his king isn't on e4. So this is a very good first move here. Okay, well, what if I play something like knight to g5, or knight to g4? So let's take a look at this instead. Well, if knight to g4, now white should play rook to c6, and now probably f5. f5 is probably going to be a winning move here. Okay, actually I think I look at lines like this a bit later on. But this is a key kind of resource, the idea that if g5, there's rook to g6, and if g takes f5 check, king takes f5, and this h5 pawn is going to be a goner. There won't be any way to save it at the end of the day. Okay, so the last thing to try here is, well, what happens if we just play passively here and see if we can prevent white from gaining too much space. So king to f7. Now, very good move here. Rook to b5. It's not that the b5 square is especially important, but white needs to waste a move. And that's one of the key things about this position that's kind of tough. So if white tries to play directly, nothing really good is going to happen. So if king to f5, e5, then knight to g4, and I push him back. I mean, if king to d6, that's great. I play king to f6, and now white's going to have some problems. I mean, now he's got to worry about his g-pawn. I'm going to play knight f2 and then go to h1 or e4, or I could play knight h6 and then f5. But I like the knight on e4 or h1 better, because then it leaves f5 and g4 free for my king. So if white just goes head first like this, he can find himself, he can find his own head on a platter. So rook to b5 is a very nice little finesse. And the point is that it puts me in a little bit of a zugzwang here. Okay, if I play, well, let's say again, I can't play knight to f5 because he just takes, and I can't play knight to g4 again because of f5. So that's the problem here. I don't want to allow that. So king to f6. Okay, now rook to b6 check. King f7. Now another good waiting move, rook to a6. Okay, again, I can't move my knight someplace that allows f5. If king to g7, then I think king to e5, and he starts to visit me, and I don't really want him to visit. But what else is there? So we'll have to look at knight f5, because okay, if knight to, or I'm sorry, yeah, knight f5, right? So that's what we'll look at. So king, sorry, I got myself all mixed up here. Ugh. Knight to f5 and king to g7 are actually going to turn out to be the same thing, and we'll see why. So knight f5, king e5. So very, very good move here. Crucial move. Without this, there's no win. All right, so now I've got a choice, trying to just keep fighting passively but not taking, and of course taking. So let's see what happens if I take. Well, then rook a7 check, king to g8, king to f6, and now big trouble. Now black's only got one move to try to resist here, and it's knight to e2. And this actually looks like it should do the job, because again, king takes g6, knight f4. This is a dead draw. I don't know if it's a dead draw, but it's a draw for sure. Absolutely. Okay, another try, maybe rook to a4, but then I can play king to h7, and he's not taking my g6 pawn. So this looks as if it's a draw, doesn't it? Well, remember what I said about rook versus knight. It's a dead draw except in two cases, or we could say three cases. So one, the simple case is you're just mating the guy. The not so simple case is that the king is going to be in trouble. Let's say the knight's covering on the back rank, but because of Zugzwang tricks, the knight's going to be lost. And then finally, there are cases where the knight is just cut off and is lost. So incredibly, and I'm sure there's no way in the world Tate would have done all this. Then again, I can't say that I would have defended perfectly either. So it's, this is all pretty hypothetical. But f5 is the only way to win, and even after this, it's not trivial at all. So this is computer analysis at this point. So f5, g takes f5, rook g7. Okay, king f8. You always want to try to stay out of the box there. Rook to d7. Okay, now here king to e8 is no good because of rook e7 check. So I've got to go back over to g8. Now king takes f5, and the problem here is that my poor knight is stranded. So he's not going to be able to find his way home to the safety of his king. So knight to g3 check, king g6 threatening mate, king f8, rook to d3, knight e2, king f6, king g8, rook d5, knight c3, rook g5 check, king f8, rook takes h5, and believe it or not, white wins by force with mate in no more than 24 more moves. So I'll just give the moves that lead to the win of the knight. That's really the key issue. It's not that there's some clever mating combination, but that the knight on c3 can't get back to safety. So king e8, king e6, again threatening mate. The real reason why king e8 is a good move is that it takes away the d5 square, so now the rook can go chasing somewhere else. And also it prevents, very importantly, knight to e4 from being checked next move. So king f8, rook c5, knight e4, it's not check. Rook c4, knight to d2, rook to g4. So now we've kind of cut the knight off. It's only got three files to play with, or three ranks to play with now. Knight to b1, king d5, knight c3, king c4. Okay, so if it retreats, it's even in worse shape. So knight a4, rook g6. So this prevents it from getting back out to b6. So you'll notice now the knight is down to just b2 and a4. Knight b2, king here. And now the knight is down to here and here. It's getting worse. And now the knight has no squares to go to. So this means after king f6, rook d2, it's gone. So it's a complicated procedure, but actually it's one of those things that if you practice it a bit, you can get a decent feel for it. So it's very tough to play it as well as, of course, the computer on the table base. But to get an idea for it is actually doable. So it's an endgame that I think is worth repeating. I've had rook versus knight in a lot of blitz games. I've never had it in a tournament game, but I've seen it in tournament games, and hey, it could have happened here. So it's worth practicing. Okay, so all of this long variation. So let's go back. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, we have this crucial ending here. So it's very tough. I mean, white has to play really accurately to win this, and while he can, I think, with best play, I wish that I had gone for this. Certainly by this point. So after rook takes a7, I mean, I think earlier c3 would have been drawing, and here I think again, king e6, you just give up the pawns, and you go for the blockade. I wouldn't. It's I may still have lost, but it would have been tough, and it would have been interesting. So what was I think also psychologically interesting about this was that I rejected it without really even considering it seriously, just because I thought I knew that as a matter of endgame theory that, again, rook and 2 versus knight and 2, same side of the board, unless it's some kind of crazy blockade where all the pawns are locked up directly, that's just an easy win. But it's not. So it was something that I thought I knew but really didn't. Just one of these things that I thought I remembered from way back when. Kind of like in the opening, if you can remember from 2 weeks ago, where I made the point about playing rook to e8 instead of knight c6, because I had thought that, okay, depending on what white does, the knight goes to c6 or it goes to d7. So twice in this game, I don't really think it cost me the first time. The second time it may have cost me. Misremembering proved to be a serious error. Okay, well anyway, back here after rook to a7, I had rejected that idea, so now we'll just see how the game finished up. Again, maybe c3 is possible, but as we saw, I had already rejected that idea too, unfortunately, maybe stupidly, and so I decided, okay, what I'll do is I'll try to swap off all the pawns on the king side as fast as I can and just hope. And Tate showed good technique to finish me off here. So g5, rook a5, c6, rook c5. And even here I had a better try than what I played. So I played like this. I played g takes f4, g takes f4, and what I was hoping was that I could win his f-pawn somehow. I mean, I saw problems. I didn't think it would work, and we'll see what happened, but it was what I tried. But maybe g4 still gives me a little bit of hope here. Okay, so now after g4, king to e4, knight c3, king e3, knight to d5, king d4, and now h4. So again, I've got to try to get these pawns off the board, and if I can, and also if my knight's not cut off from my king, I draw. So let's see. So rook takes c6, king f5, and now if he plays king takes d5, hg, and I'm actually drawing this. Rook takes e4, g2, rook c1, king f4. This would be a draw. So did I miss a last chance to draw the game? Probably not. Instead of king takes knight, white should play g takes h4. And although it's close, I can't quite save the game. So knight takes f4, and now there's only one way for white to win here. So again, this would be a pretty good exercise, I think, for you to just pause and see if you can figure it out. Move pieces around, do what you can. It's just kind of surprising. It's kind of neat. So rook takes e4. It's the only way to win here. And now if I try, for example, king g6, king e5, knight h3, white only has one winning move here too, and it's not rook takes g4. If he plays rook takes g4, king h5, and I'm actually drawing. And the reason why, it's kind of instructive, is that his king can't really make it over. Well, actually, it's not even that. I can just play knight g1, knight f3. So let's say if he plays king f5, what happens here? Well, here I guess I have to play knight f2. But he has to move his rook somewhere sideways, and then I just go back to h3. And he's not making any progress here. If he tries instead of king f5, so let's say he just moves to, I don't know, let's say e4. Okay, so if he goes rook to e4, play knight to g1, and the threat of knight to f3 just holds the game. It draws immediately, I think. So this is pretty tough. So the only way for white to win in this position is with rook to c8. Okay, so now if I play king to h5, whoops, if I play king h5, that doesn't achieve anything because of rook to h8 check, and he drives me back. Okay, so king to h7, king to f5, g3, and now only move, rook c2, and obviously white mates in 32 moves. So again, one of these table-based things. Just give a few moves here, knight f2, so I'm threatening to queen, so he has to play rook c3, king h6. Okay, if I try knight h1, rook c6, knight f2, rook g6, knight h1, h5, here, h6, king g5, h7, and I have to take because otherwise white plays king h6 and rook g8 mate, so I take, and rook h6, and that wins. Okay, so that's one variation. Second variation is if king h6, rook takes g3, king h5. looks like I'm drawing. I win the pawn, right? Rook f3. Knight g4. Now rook h3. Now do I have perpetual check on his rook? Again, no. It's really annoying. So rook a2, and now of course if I take the pawn, he has rook to a4, and if knight e3, king f4, so again he's hitting it, and I can't play knight to g2 check, and if knight to d5, king g3, and from here it's routine. So this is really tough. I mean, this would have been very hard for him to have found. So I have to say, to my sorrow, that I really played this endgame very, very poorly. I would have used some other phrase, but I don't want to be demeaning to morons to call myself one here. Very, very bad. Okay, but you learn. So it was a tough game, and this is the kind of game that you can learn a lot from, and that you really need to work on. When you lose these tough, long heartbreakers, there's usually a number of critical moments, and just so much that can be that you can get out of it by really studying it in depth. So the game went g takes f4, g takes f4, h4. And so my idea is kind of funny. I'm going to just try to push the h pawn, and with my king on f5, my knight on d5, I'm hoping, come on, I got to win this one lousy pawn. I got 3 pawns I can throw away for just one of his pawns, but I can't do it. Can't succeed. So rook takes c6, king f5, and we have this kind of amusing little thing now. So he plays rook c5, pushes me back, and he takes that one. Okay, so now I play h3, and I'm hoping again his king will go give chase. But he plays well. So he plays rook c6, rook c5 again, rook c8. Of course, he could have done that right away. I mean, he didn't need to do that little rook c6, c5 thing. And it doesn't gain time on the clock either, because we were in a sudden death time control. Anyway, so I play king f5, plays rook f8. So again, a good, accurate move. So what I was hoping for, of course, was something like rook to h8, and now h2. So this is, well, actually, this doesn't even matter either, because he does the same thing. So no, of course, yeah, knight takes f4. What am I saying? So knight f4, and now if rook f8, king g5. Oops, actually this is the wrong way, because there's a little trick here. Oh no, there isn't. Okay, so yeah, h4, and he can't play rook to g8 because I just queen with check. So that's the trappy idea. So of course here he has to play king g2, and this position seems to me roughly equal. So anyway, that's the trap. That's what I was really hoping for. That was the basic idea behind the whole g5 bit. But it doesn't work because, again, he just interpolates this check, and only after king e6 plays rook h8. So one last try, king f5. Of course, by now I think you've got the pattern. Okay, he doesn't play rook takes h3 because knight f4, and I've got the draw. But he plays rook h5 check, and then, of course, it's a win. So that was it. That was the end of the game. Very exciting, very dramatic game. Just a real war. I mean, I'm throwing tactics at him. He's hanging in there, and and then I go. He holds on, and I go awry, and then I have to hang on for dear life. And finally we get to this ending, and he just played better. Now, it was tougher for me, so I had to do the finding there. So even though it was a draw, and there were lots of ways for me to draw this, one drawing idea and a couple of ideas that come really close. Still, the tough part, the burden of proof was really on me to prove the draw. And some lines, the burden of proof was on him to prove the win. Anyway, very complicated ending, really complicated game. One of the most interesting and fun games, even though I was, really, of course, disappointed to lose at the end of the thing. I also felt very happy to have played such a game. So I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and maybe more, since you didn't have to suffer the unpleasant result. And anyway, thank you. Hope you were able to be patient for all 3 weeks of this. And next time.